You call this service? David Francisco's voice cut through the soft piano music of Ross's, Chicago's most exclusive Italian restaurant, where celebrities whispered over truffle risotto and senators made backroom deals over Barolo. His steel-gray eyes, the kind of eyes that had probably witnessed things Sarah couldn't even imagine, fixed on her with an intensity that made the temperature drop. I've been waiting 25 minutes for a simple order. The entire restaurant held its breath. Crystal chandeliers caught the light from dozens of candles, casting dancing shadows across white linen tablecloths. The usual murmur of conversation died. Even Chef Vincent Keller had emerged from the kitchen, his face pale, gripping a copper pot like a shield. Sarah's hands trembled as she clutched her serving tray, knuckles white. She was 23 years old, had been working double shifts for 8 months straight, and had perfected the art of invisible. Keep your head down. Smile. Apologize. Survive. Hey beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. Before we dive deep into what happens next between Sarah and this dangerous man, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button. Now, let's get back to the story. David Francisco wasn't just any customer. The kitchen staff had been whispering since he'd made the reservation under an alias 3 days ago. Victor Drago, his stone-faced lieutenant, stood by the entrance, a bulge visible beneath his tailored suit jacket. 2 more men flanked the emergency exit. The owner had personally instructed every server, whatever he wants, however he wants it, no mistakes. And Sarah had made a mistake. Not really her fault. The kitchen had boned his osso buco, and Chef Keller had insisted on remaking it from scratch rather than serving David Francisco something subpar. But fault didn't matter when you were staring at a man who allegedly controlled half of Chicago's underground, whose family had built an empire on fear and blood, whose very presence made hardened businessmen stutter. I apologize, sir, Sarah began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The kitchen. I don't want to hear about the kitchen. David stood, unfolding to his full 6'3" height. His custom black suit probably cost more than Sarah made in 6 months. A thin scar traced his jawline, barely visible in the dim light. At 35, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who'd never heard the word no, and survived to enforce consequences. I want to know why a simple request is beyond your capability. Heat flushed Sarah's cheeks. Around them, other diners pretended to focus on their plates while clearly listening. Rose Connor, Sarah's only real friend at Ross's, stood frozen near the bar, eyes wide with warning, don't. Just apologize and walk away. But something in David's tone, the casual cruelty, the assumption that she was disposable, worthless, ignited something Sarah had been suppressing for months. Years, maybe. Since her parents died in that car accident. Since she'd become a 23-year-old guardian to a 4th grader. Since she'd started measuring her life in tips and takeout boxes and sleepless nights wondering if she was enough. The osso buco is being prepared fresh, Sarah said, lifting her chin. It'll be perfect in 5 minutes. I can bring you complimentary. Do I look like I care about complimentary? David's voice exploded across the restaurant, sharp enough to make the nearest couple jump. His hand slammed the table, making silverware clatter. Do you have any idea who you're talking to? Who you're making wait like some? The words left Sarah's mouth before her brain could stop them. Shout at me again and I'll. The restaurant didn't just go quiet. It went silent. The kind of silence that precedes earthquakes. Even the piano player's hands froze mid-chord. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. What was she doing? Emma's face flashed in her mind, her gap-toothed smile, her beat-up sneakers, the fear in her eyes every time she asked, "We're gonna stay together, right, Sarah?" But she couldn't stop. Wouldn't stop. And I'll tell you exactly what you can do with your attitude, Sarah finished, her voice low and clear. I've been on my feet for 11 hours. I'm doing my best. You're not the only person in this restaurant, and you're certainly not the only one with problems. So you can wait 5 more minutes like a civilized human being, or you can leave. Victor Drago's hand moved toward his jacket. David Francisco stared at her, his expression unreadable. And Sarah realized she might have just made the biggest, and possibly last, mistake of her life. The seconds stretched like hours. David Francisco's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching beneath that scar. His eyes, God, those eyes were like winter itself, scanned Sarah from head to toe, not with the sleazy assessment she'd endured from drunk customers, but with the calculating precision of someone trying to solve an unexpected equation. Then he laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was the sound of breaking glass, sharp and dangerous, but genuine. He sank back into his chair, waving Victor's hand away from his weapon with a casual flick of his wrist. "Sit down," David said. Sarah blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Sit." He gestured to the empty chair across from him. "I want to know who has the audacity to threaten a man like me over osso buco." "I'm working, sir. I can't." "You just told me I could leave my own reservation. I think we're past formalities." His expression shifted into something Sarah couldn't quite read. Amusement? Curiosity? "Sit down, or I'll assume you're all bark and no bite." Every instinct screamed at Sarah to apologize, to run, to find Mr. Castellano the manager and beg him to handle this. But she'd already crossed the line. Might as well see what was on the other side. She sat, spine straight, hands folded in her lap to hide their shaking. Up close, David Francisco was even more unsettling. Not because he looked dangerous, though he absolutely did, but because he looked alive in a way most of Ross's wealthy clientele didn't. His eyes actually focused on her, seeing her, not through her like she was part of the furniture. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarah. Sarah Jones." "How long have you worked here, Sarah Jones?" 8 months. "And in those 8 months, has anyone ever complained about your service?" She hesitated. "No, sir." "Then why are you terrified right now?" He leaned forward, elbows on the table, genuine curiosity in his voice. "And don't say you're not. I can see your pulse from here." Sarah's hand instinctively went to her throat. "You have a reputation." "Ah. So you know who I am." "Everyone knows who you are, Mr. Francisco. And yet you threaten me anyway." He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he hadn't encountered before. "Why?" The question caught her off guard. Because she was exhausted? Because she'd reached her breaking point? Because sometimes you got so tired of being invisible that you'd rather be seen and destroyed than ignored one more second? "Because," Sarah said slowly, "I'm tired of people treating service workers like we're not human." "You're angry about waiting 25 minutes? I get it. But I didn't burn your food. I didn't make you wait on purpose. I'm just trying to do my job and get through the night, and you—" She stopped herself, swallowing hard. "I apologize. That was out of line." "No." David's voice softened almost imperceptibly. "That was honest." Before Sarah could respond, Chef Keller himself appeared at the table, carrying a plate of osso buco that smelled like heaven. His hands trembled slightly as he set it down. "Mr. Francisco, please accept my sincere apologies for the delay. This is on the house, along with anything else you—" "Put it on my bill," David interrupted, not looking away from Sarah. "All of it. And give Ms. Jones here the rest of the night off. With pay." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Sir, I can't." "That wasn't a request." David picked up his fork, finally breaking eye contact. "You stood up for yourself. The least I can do is not make you serve me for the next hour. Consider it a reward for bravery. Or stupidity. I haven't decided which yet." Chef Keller looked between them, bewildered, then grabbed Sarah's arm with surprising strength. "Come. Now." 5 minutes later, Sarah stood in the staff changing room, her apron balled in her hands, trying to process what had just happened. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky and slightly nauseous. "Are you insane?" Rose burst through the door, her red hair escaping its bun, brown eyes wide with a mixture of horror and admiration. Rose Connor had worked at Ross's for 3 years and had mastered the art of reading wealthy men, which ones tipped well, which ones grabbed, which ones were actually decent beneath the designer clothes. "Sarah, that was David Francisco. David Francisco. Do you know what he did to the guy who scratched his car last year?" "I don't want to know," Sarah muttered, sinking onto the wooden bench. "Sent him a bill for $50,000 and had his credit rating destroyed until he paid every penny." Rose sat beside her, voice dropping. "He's not someone you talk back to. Ever. What were you thinking?" "I wasn't." Sarah dropped her head into her hands. "God, Rose, what if I just screwed everything up? What if he complains and I get fired? Emma's caseworker is coming Thursday. If I lose this job. Hey. Rose wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Breathe. You still have a job. For some insane reason, he seemed, I don't know, impressed. Saar thought about those grey eyes, that calculating stare. He seemed interested in why someone would be stupid enough to challenge him. Well, you are pretty stupid. Rose squeezed her shoulder affectionately. But also the bravest person I know. How is Emma, by the way? The question made Saar's chest tighten. Emma. Her entire world. Her baby sister with mom's blonde hair and dad's stubborn chin, who'd watched their parents' coffins lowered into the ground and asked Saar if they were coming back. That was 18 months ago. Saar had been 22, barely scraping by with a mediocre apartment and community college classes she could no longer afford. Suddenly she was a guardian, a parent, a sole provider for a traumatized 8-year-old who had nightmares every night and forgot to smile for weeks. The state had been monitoring them ever since. Every 3 months, a social worker showed up to inspect their tiny one-bedroom apartment, to ask Emma invasive questions, to scrutinize Saar's bank statements and work schedule. Always with the underlying threat, prove you can provide, or we'll find someone who can. She's okay, Saar said quietly. Worried about the visit. She knows they're looking for reasons to, her voice cracked. She couldn't say it. Couldn't voice the nightmare that woke her up at 3 a.m. in cold sweats. They're not taking her, Rose said firmly. You're an amazing guardian. You work 2 jobs, you got her into that after-school program, her grades are good. Our apartment failed the last inspection. Not enough space. I'm sleeping on the couch so Emma can have the bedroom, but apparently that's inadequate living arrangements for a guardian. They want me to upgrade to a 2-bedroom within 90 days or they'll reassess placement. Saar laughed bitterly. You know what a 2-bedroom costs in a decent neighborhood? $1,800 minimum. I'm barely making rent on our place now. Rose was quiet for a moment. How much do you need? More than I have. I've been saving, but... Saar gestured helplessly. I'm short about $3,000 for first, last, and deposit. I've got 5 weeks left. Saar didn't know that across the restaurant, David Francisco was having a conversation of his own. You want me to do what? Victor Drago stood at attention, his expression carefully neutral despite the absurdity of the request. Find out everything about the waitress. Saar Jones. David took a bite of the osso buco, perfectly cooked, worth the wait, and watched through the two-way mirror as Saar sat in the changing room, head in her hands. Employment history, living situation, why she looks like she hasn't slept in a month. Boss, she's nobody. Just a... Nobody. David set down his fork with deliberate care. That nobody just looked me in the eye and told me off in front of 50 witnesses. When was the last time anyone did that? Victor shifted uncomfortably. Your mother. Last Christmas. Despite himself, David smiled. Exactly. So either Saar Jones is the stupidest person in Chicago, or she's desperate enough that consequences don't matter anymore. I want to know which. And then... David looked at his reflection in the wine glass, the face that made grown men nervous, that had built an empire his grandfather started with blood and bullets. He was 35 years old, worth more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes, and so thoroughly bored with his existence that tonight's confrontation was the most interesting thing that had happened in months. No one surprised him anymore. No one challenged him. They either feared him or wanted something from him, and both groups were equally tedious. But Saar Jones, with her tired eyes and trembling hands and absolute refusal to back down. And then we'll see, David said softly. We'll see exactly what kind of person Saar Jones really is. What he didn't say, what he barely admitted to himself. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely curious about another human being. And David Francisco had learned long ago that his curiosity, once sparked, was impossible to extinguish. Saar didn't go straight home. She couldn't face the empty apartment yet, couldn't face the stack of bills on the kitchen counter or the calendar with Thursday circled in red marker. Instead, she took the long way, walking through Millennium Park even though it was nearly 11 p.m., letting the October wind cut through her thin jacket. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, the elderly neighbor who watched Emma after school. She had another nightmare. Asking for you. I told her you'd be home soon. Guilt crashed over Sarah like a wave. Emma needed her, and here she was wandering around downtown because she'd nearly destroyed their entire life over her pride. She was half a block from their apartment building, a converted warehouse in a neighborhood that was up and coming according to the rental ad, which really meant still mostly sketchy but getting expensive anyway, when she noticed the black Mercedes parked outside. Expensive cars didn't park on their street. Not unless someone was very lost or very dangerous. Sarah's steps slowed. The driver's door opened, and Victor Drago emerged, his massive frame blocking the streetlight. "Ms. Jones," he said, his voice surprisingly soft for a man who looked like he bench-pressed motorcycles. "Mr. Francisco would like a word." The back door opened. "No," Sarah said immediately, even as her heart kicked into overdrive. "Absolutely not. I'm off the clock, I'm going home, and whatever your boss wants. It's about your sister." David Francisco stepped out of the car, looking impossibly out of place on her crumbling sidewalk in his $1,000 suit. His eyes found hers in the dim light. "Emma Jones, age 9, 4th grade at Lincoln Elementary. Mrs. Patricia Chen babysits her most afternoons. Your caseworker is Linda Morrison, scheduled to visit this Thursday at 2 p.m. to assess whether you can provide adequate housing." The blood drained from Sarah's face. What did you? "I told you I wanted to know who had the audacity to threaten me." David's expression was unreadable. Turns out, Sarah Jones is exactly who she appears to be, a 23-year-old woman working herself to death trying to keep her sister out of foster care. Admirable. Also foolish, given your current financial situation. Rage ignited in Sarah's chest, burning away the fear. "You investigated me? You had someone dig into my life because I asked you to stop yelling." "I investigate everyone who interests me." He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. "And you, Sarah Jones, interest me very much." "Well, I'm so glad I could entertain you. I'm here to make you an offer." Sarah stopped mid-sentence. "What?" David glanced at the building behind her, peeling paint, flickering hallway light visible through the security door, a window on the 3rd floor covered with cardboard. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You need $3,000 for a new apartment. First month, last month, security deposit on a 2-bedroom that will pass inspection." It wasn't a question. "Plus you're behind on rent here, your sister needs dental work you can't afford, and you've been rationing your own meals to make sure she eats properly." Each fact landed like a physical blow. Sarah's hands curled into fists. "If you're here to mock me, I'm here to help you." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and terrifying. "Why?" Sarah whispered. David stepped closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne and something else. Cigarette smoke, maybe, or whiskey. "Because you did something tonight that no one has done in a very long time. You saw me as just another person being an asshole, not as David Francisco, head of the Francisco family, man to be feared. You treated me like I was human." His voice dropped. "That's rare. Worth rewarding. I don't want your money." "Everyone wants money, Sarah. Don't insult both of us by pretending otherwise." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. $10,000. Enough for your apartment, enough to get ahead on bills, enough to show your caseworker that you're providing a stable home. Sarah stared at the envelope like it was a snake. "What do you want in return?" There it was, the question that mattered. Nothing was ever free, especially not from men like David Francisco. "Dinner," he said simply. Sarah blinked. "What?" "Dinner. Once a week for the next 3 months. You and me, various restaurants around the city." His expression remained perfectly serious. "I want company. Real company, from someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm being an asshole." "You're insane." "I'm bored," David corrected. "Do you have any idea how exhausting it is to be surrounded by people who either want to kill you or kiss your feet? You're neither. You're honest. I'll pay $10,000 for 12 dinners with an honest person." That doesn't make sense. You could hire an escort? A therapist? A friend?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I don't want someone I've hired to pretend. I want someone who'll actually tell me the truth. You've already proven you can do that." Sarah's mind raced. $10,000. Emma's dental work. A real apartment with 2 bedrooms and working heat. Thursday's inspection passed, maybe even impressed. No more lying awake at night calculating tips, stretching dollars, praying nothing unexpected happened because there was no buffer, no safety net, nothing but her and her determination to keep Emma safe. But David Francisco was dangerous. Not just powerful, dangerous. The kind of man whose world Sarah didn't understand, didn't want to understand. Just dinner, she asked carefully. Nothing else. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Just dinner. Conversation. You can bring a friend if it makes you feel safer, at least for the first few times. And if I say no? Then I'll get back in my car, and you'll never see me again. He extended the envelope toward her. But we both know you can't afford to say no. Not really. Not with Emma's future on the line. He was right, and they both knew it. Hating him for it didn't change the mathematics of desperation. Sarah took the envelope with shaking hands. The moment her fingers touched it, David's hand covered hers, warm, solid, sending an unexpected jolt through her entire body. His eyes locked on hers. Thursday night, he said softly. I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something nice. Victor will provide my number in case you need to reach me before then. I don't have anything nice, Sarah admitted, then immediately regretted the honesty. David's smile shifted into something almost genuine. Then I suppose you'll have to go shopping. Consider it an investment in our arrangement. He released her hand and stepped back into the Mercedes. Victor handed her a business card, heavy stock, embossed lettering, before following his boss into the car. Sarah stood on the sidewalk, watching the taillights disappear, clutching an envelope containing more money than she'd ever held at once and a business card with a number that connected her to one of the most dangerous men in Chicago. She should throw it away. Should return the money. Should run as far from David Francisco as humanly possible. Instead, she went upstairs to where Emma was waiting, the envelope burning in her pocket like a promise. Or a threat. She hadn't decided which yet. Emma was asleep on the couch when Sarah walked in, her small body curled under the donated blanket from Goodwill, blonde hair spread across the cushion. Mrs. Chen looked up from her knitting, her weathered face creasing with relief. She fought sleep for an hour, the older woman whispered, gathering her things. Kept asking when you'd be home. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Chen. Work ran late, and then, Sarah stopped, feeling the weight of the envelope in her jacket. Thank you. For everything. After Mrs. Chen left, Sarah sat at their tiny kitchen table and opened the envelope with trembling fingers. $10,000. All hundreds, neatly stacked. She'd never seen so much cash in her life. For a wild moment, she wondered if it was fake, if this whole thing was some elaborate joke. But the bills felt real, looked real, and David Francisco didn't seem like the type of man who made jokes. Sarah counted it 3 times, then hid it in the coffee can under the sink where she kept their emergency money, currently $47 and change. She should feel relieved. Grateful, even. Instead, she felt owned. Wednesday morning, Sarah called 3 apartment complexes she'd been watching for months, places in actual safe neighborhoods with good schools and playgrounds. By noon, she'd toured a 2-bedroom in Lincoln Park, hardwood floors, updated kitchen, a bedroom for Emma with windows that actually locked, and put down a deposit. The landlord, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Whitmore, had looked at Sarah's stack of cash with barely concealed surprise. Most young people pay with checks, she'd commented. I like to keep things simple, Sarah had replied, practicing the lie she'd need to tell the caseworker. Saved for months. Overtime shifts. Tax return. Birthday money from relatives. Not, sold 12 dinners to a Mafia boss for $10,000. Thursday at 2 p.m., Linda Morrison arrived for the home inspection, a thin woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a clipboard that might as well have been a weapon. Emma sat on the couch, hands folded, trying to be invisible. Sarah showed her the lease for the new apartment, the bank statement showing her savings. She'd deposited half the cash and kept the rest hidden. Emma's improved report card, the receipt for her upcoming dental appointment. This is significant progress, Linda admitted, making notes. The new apartment meets all our requirements. Emma, honey, are you happy with your sister? Emma's hand found Sarah's. Sarah's the best. She takes care of me. And Sarah takes care of herself too. Linda's eyes found the dark circles under Sarah's eyes, the way her clothes hung a little looser than they had 3 months ago. You can't pour from an empty cup, Ms. Jones. I'm fine, Sarah lied. Everything's fine. After Linda left with promises to update Emma's file positively, Sarah collapsed on the couch beside her sister. We okay? Emma asked in a small voice. We okay, Em? We're gonna be better than okay. Sarah pulled her close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. I promise. She tried not to think about what she'd promised David Francisco in exchange. Thursday night arrived too quickly. Sarah stood in front of her closet, if you could call a rod with hangers wedged in the corner a closet, staring at her limited options. Work clothes. Jeans. T-shirts. A dress she'd worn to her parents' funeral that still smelled faintly of the church incense. Nothing appropriate for dinner with a man who probably spent more on watches than she made in a year. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Victor will pick you up at 6:45. The restaurant has a cocktail dress code. If you need assistance with attire, there's a boutique on Michigan Avenue, Bella's. Mention my name. DF. Sarah stared at the text. The casual way he'd anticipated her problem, solved it before she'd even asked. It should have felt helpful. Instead, it felt like he was buying her piece by piece. But Emma was at a sleepover at her friend Matilda's house, first one in months because Sarah finally felt stable enough to say yes, and Sarah had made an agreement. She kept her promises, even ones that terrified her. 45 minutes later, she stood in Bella's boutique, surrounded by dresses that cost more than her monthly rent, while a saleswoman named Sophie fluttered around her with the reverence usually reserved for royalty. Mr. Francisco called ahead, Sophie explained, pulling a deep blue dress off the rack. He has exquisite taste. Try this. The dress fit like it had been made for her, simple, elegant, hitting just above the knee. Sarah stared at her reflection, barely recognizing herself. Shoes, Sophie declared, already moving. And perhaps something for your hair. By the time Victor's Mercedes pulled up outside her building at 6:43, the man was nothing if not punctual. Sarah had been transformed. New dress, new heels that would probably cripple her by midnight, her hair swept up in a way that made her neck look longer, makeup applied by Sophie's expert hand. She felt like a fraud. Victor opened the back door without comment, his expression carefully neutral. Sarah slid in, and her breath caught. David sat on the opposite seat, looking unfairly perfect in a charcoal suit with no tie, his top button undone. His eyes traveled over her slowly, and something shifted in his expression. Blue suits you, he said quietly. I thought it might. You bought me a dress. Sarah tried to keep her voice steady. That wasn't part of the agreement. Consider it a gift. You can't have dinner at Alinea in funeral attire. He poured amber liquid from a crystal decanter into 2 glasses. Whiskey. Or are you one of those wine people? I'm one of those can't afford to develop expensive taste people. David's lips quirked. Try it anyway. Sarah took the glass, their fingers brushing. That same electric jolt from Tuesday night. She sipped, smooth fire, nothing like the cheap vodka she tried in college, and tried not to cough. Hate it, she managed. Liar. I saw your eyes. He settled back, studying her like she was a painting in a museum. You're nervous. I'm terrified, Sarah corrected. I googled you. Did you know there are entire Reddit threads dedicated to your family? I did. Some of them are surprisingly accurate. He didn't seem bothered. Did you learn anything useful? That you're either a misunderstood philanthropist or a criminal mastermind, depending on who's posting. Also that you haven't been photographed with the same woman twice in 5 years. Careful, Sarah. You're starting to sound jealous. I'm starting to wonder what I've gotten myself into. The car glided through Chicago's evening traffic, heading toward the Gold Coast. David leaned forward, elbows on his knees, close enough that Sarah could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. Here's what you've gotten into, he said, voice low and serious. 12 dinners with a man who's tired of being lied to. Who wants to have a conversation with someone who sees him as a person, not a bank account or a threat. You can ask me anything. I'll answer honestly. And I expect the same from you. Anything. Anything. Sarah's courage, bolstered by expensive whiskey and the surreal nature of the evening, made her bold. Did you really have someone's credit destroyed over a car? Yes. He keyed my Aston Martin because I'd parked in his spot. Caused $30,000 in damage, then laughed about it. David's expression didn't change. I don't forgive disrespect, Sarah. But I don't create it either. He struck first. That's not justice. That's revenge. In my world, they're the same thing. He tilted his head. Does that scare you? Yes, Sarah admitted. But probably not as much as it should. Something flickered across David's face. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. Your turn. Ask me something real. The car stopped outside a restaurant Sarah had only seen in magazines, all glass and minimalist elegance, the kind of place where reservations required months of waiting. Why me? Sarah asked as Victor opened the door. You could have anyone. Models, actresses, women who actually belong in this world. Why a broke waitress from a converted warehouse? David stepped out, then offered his hand to help her. When she took it, he didn't let go immediately. Because everyone else is playing a game, he said softly, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. And I think you're the first person I've met in a decade who doesn't even know the rules. Dinner was both wonderful and excruciating. The food was art on plates, tiny portions that probably cost more than Sarah's grocery budget for a month. David ordered for both of them, navigating the menu in French with the sommelier, completely at ease in this world of hushed conversations and crystal glasses. Sarah tried not to feel like everyone was staring at them. At her. Relax, David murmured, reading her tension. You look like you're waiting for an ambush. I'm waiting to use the wrong fork and embarrass both of us. There is no wrong fork, Sarah. It's just dinner. He demonstrated, his movements economical and precise. Start from the outside, work your way in. And even if you used your hands, I wouldn't care. Your reputation would. My reputation is built on much more interesting things than dining etiquette. He studied her over his wine glass. Tell me about Emma. What's she like? The question surprised her. Why do you care? Because you're willing to have dinner with a dangerous man to protect her. That makes her interesting. Sarah set down her fork, emotions tangling in her chest. She's everything good that's left in my life. She's smart, scary smart, like she'll probably be running a company someday. She loves horses even though she's never ridden one. She has nightmares about the accident, but she doesn't talk about them because she doesn't want to make me sad. Her voice cracked slightly. She's 9 years old, and she's already learned to make herself smaller so the world doesn't take her away from me. David was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it. I lost my father when I was 12. Car bomb meant for him hit our driver instead, but he died in the hospital 3 days later. Complications from the stress, they said. His fingers tightened around the stem of his glass. My mother told me to be strong. So I was. I didn't cry at the funeral. Didn't cry after. Just became who I needed to be. Did it work? Sarah whispered. I'm sitting in a restaurant that costs $1,000 a plate, surrounded by people who fear me, having the first honest conversation I've had in months with a woman I blackmailed into dinner. His smile was bitter. You tell me. The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. Sarah saw past the expensive suit, the controlled expression, the reputation. Saw a 12-year-old boy learning that showing weakness meant destruction. Saw someone as lonely as she was, just in a different way. You didn't blackmail me, she said quietly. You gave me a choice. I chose Emma. Would you have chosen differently if she wasn't in the equation? Sarah considered lying, then remembered his request for honesty. I don't know. Maybe. Probably. She met his eyes. But I also haven't had a conversation like this in 18 months. Everyone either pities me or wants something from me. You're the first person who's just talking. Like I'm a person, not a tragedy. Then we're even, David said, and his smile became real. The rest of dinner flowed easier. They talked about everything. Books, music, the absurdity of Chicago politics, David's mother who apparently terrified him more than rival crime families, Sarah's memories of her parents before the accident. The conversation sparkled and dipped, found comfortable silences and heated debates. By the time dessert arrived, some chocolate creation that probably required an engineering degree to make, Sarah had almost forgotten who she was dining with. Almost. Mr. Francisco. A man approached their table, 50-ish, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. I heard you were dining here tonight. I wanted to discuss the riverfront property development. Not now, Thomas. David's voice could have frozen nitrogen. It'll just take a moment. I said not now. David's hand found Sarah's across the table, his eyes never leaving the intruder. I'm with someone. You can call my office Monday. The man's eyes flicked to Sarah, and she saw the dismissal there, the calculation. Who is she? What does she want? How can I use this? Then he left, properly cowed. Does that happen often? Sarah asked. Constantly. Why do you think I wanted dinner with someone who has no interest in my business deals? David's thumb traced circles on her palm, seemingly unconscious of the gesture. You're the first person in years who wants nothing from me except honesty. I took $10,000 from you. I offered it. There's a difference. His eyes held hers. Are you having a terrible time? Sarah realized with surprise that she wasn't. No. Actually, no. Good. David signaled for the check. Because I'd like to do this again. Tuesday, if you're free. I work Tuesday. So quit. Sarah nearly choked on her water. What? Quit Ross's. You're moving anyway, the commute will be terrible, and you don't need the job anymore. He said it so casually, like he was suggesting she change her hair. I'll pay you a stipend for our arrangement. Say, $2,000 a week for the next 3 months. That's $24,000 total, more than you'd make at the restaurant. You want to pay me to have dinner with you. I want to pay you to be available for dinner when I ask, yes. Think of it as a consulting fee. You consult on what it's like to be a normal human being. The offer was insane. Also tempting. Also terrifying. I need to think about it, Sarah managed. Think fast. I don't like waiting. But his smile took the edge off the command. Victor drove Sarah home at 11. She felt drunk on expensive food and dangerous conversations, her head spinning with the evening's impossibility. As she stepped out of the car, David caught her hand. Sarah, he said, voice low. Thank you. For what? For being exactly who you are. He released her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. 1 dinner down. 11 to go. Sarah walked into her building, heart pounding, replaying every word, every look, every moment his hand had touched hers. She was playing with fire. The terrifying part was that she was starting to enjoy the burn. 3 weeks. 9 dinners. One undeniable truth Sarah couldn't ignore anymore. She was falling for David Francisco. It had happened slowly, then all at once, like stepping into a pool and suddenly realizing you were in over your head. The way he listened when she talked about Emma, really listened, remembering details she'd mentioned in passing and asking follow-up questions days later. The way his laugh sounded different when they were alone, genuine instead of controlled. The way he'd started texting her during the day, random observations, terrible jokes, pictures of sunsets from his office window. This reminded me of your eyes, he'd written beneath a photo of Lake Michigan at dawn. Blue with too many secrets. Sarah had stared at that text for 10 minutes, heart hammering, before responding with something deliberately casual. She'd quit Ross's. Moved into the Lincoln Park apartment, which Emma had declared the best place in the whole world, because it had a window seat where she could read. The stipend David provided, deposited into her account every Monday like clockwork, covered their expenses with money to spare. For the first time in 18 months, Sarah wasn't surviving. She was living. But the guilt was constant, a low hum beneath every moment of happiness. She was being paid to have dinner with a man. She was accepting money from someone whose hands weren't clean. She was building a life on a foundation made of dangerous choices. And she was starting to want more than just dinner. Their 10th dinner was at a small Italian place in Wicker Park, not fancy, just good food and checkered tablecloths. David had let her choose, and she'd picked somewhere that reminded her of family dinners before the accident. You're quiet tonight, David observed, twirling pasta around his fork. He'd loosened up over the weeks, wearing jeans sometimes, smiling more easily. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Thinking, Sarah admitted. Dangerous habit. What about us? The word slipped out before she could stop it. This. Whatever this is. David set down his fork, giving her his full attention. That focus, once intimidating, now made her feel like the only person in the world. And what do you think this is? He asked carefully. I don't know. That's the problem. Sarah took a breath, forcing herself to be honest. When this started, I thought it was just transactional. You pay me, I show up, we have dinner, I go home. Simple. And now? Now I think about you when you're not there. I check my phone hoping you've texted. She stopped, cheeks flushing. This wasn't supposed to happen. David was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table, taking her hand. Sarah, he said softly, I need to tell you something. And you're not going to like it. Her stomach dropped. Here it was, the other shoe, the catch, the reason this had all been too good to be true. When I first approached you at Ross's, it wasn't just because you interested me. David's thumb traced her knuckles, but his eyes held something Sarah hadn't seen before. Guilt. I knew who you were before that night. I'd been watching you for weeks. What? Sarah tried to pull her hand back, but he held firm. Your father, David continued, his voice strained. Thomas Jones. He worked for my family. 20 years ago, before I took over, before my father died. He was an accountant who handled our legitimate business fronts. The restaurant seemed to tilt. Sarah's father, quiet, gentle, always home for dinner, had worked for the Francisco crime family? You're lying. I wish I was. David's jaw tightened. He left when I was 15, right after my father's death. Took his knowledge and disappeared. Changed his name, moved to the suburbs, built a new life. My grandfather wanted to find him, but my mother convinced him to let it go. Thomas had never betrayed us, never talked. He just left. Sarah's mind raced, trying to reconcile the father she remembered, the man who coached her soccer team, who made pancakes on Sunday, who cried at her graduation, with someone who'd worked for criminals. Why are you telling me this now? Because 2 days ago, someone broke into your old apartment. David's grip on her hand tightened. The one you just moved out of. They were looking for something. Files, maybe. Evidence. I don't know. But whoever it was, they knew who your father was. And now they know about you. Fear, cold and immediate, flooded Sarah's chest. Emma is safe. I have people watching her, watching both of you. Have since our first dinner. He must have seen her expression shift, because he added quickly, not to control you. To protect you. I knew there was a chance my enemies would make the connection eventually. Your enemies. Sarah's voice came out flat. Because of course you have enemies. Sarah. You knew. She finally yanked her hand free, standing so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. You knew about my father, you knew there might be danger, and you, what? Decided to get close to me anyway? Use me as bait. No. David stood too, his composure cracking for the first time since she'd met him. I approached you because I wanted to understand. Your father was a good man who worked for bad people and then chose to walk away. I wanted to know if his daughter was the same, if she could see past what my family is and recognize that I'm trying to be different. Different. Sarah laughed bitterly. You investigated me. You're having me followed. You. I'm falling in love with you. The words hit like a physical force. Sarah froze, heart pounding, tears burning behind her eyes. I didn't plan this, David continued, his voice rough. I didn't plan any of this. I thought I'd have a few dinners with the daughter of an old associate, satisfy my curiosity, and move on. Instead, I found someone who makes me want to be better than I am. Someone who looks at me and sees a person, not a monster. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the desperation in his eyes. I should have told you sooner. I know that. But I was terrified that the moment you knew the truth, you'd run. Maybe I should run. Maybe you should. He didn't try to stop her, didn't reach for her. Just stood there, raw and vulnerable in a way Sarah had never seen. But before you decide, you should know, whatever happened to your parents, I had nothing to do with it. I was 19 when they died. I wasn't even in Chicago. And I've spent the last 3 weeks trying to find out who's suddenly interested in Thomas Jones's daughter, because whoever they are, they're not connected to my family. Sarah's world was spinning. Her father's secret life. David's confession. The fact that someone, unknown, unnamed, was apparently hunting for something connected to her family. The accident, she whispered. The car crash. Was it? I don't know. David's voice was gentle. But I'm going to find out. I promise you that. The restaurant had gone quiet around them. A few other diners were staring, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to care. I need time, she managed. To think. To process. Take all the time you need. David pulled out his phone, sent a quick text. Victor will take you home. My people will keep watching Emma's school, your building. You won't see them, but they'll be there. And if I tell you to call them off? To leave me alone? Pain flickered across his face. Then I will. But I'm asking you, begging you, not to. Not until we know who's out there and what they want. Sarah stood at the crossroads of everything she thought she knew. Her father, a man with secrets. David, a man with blood on his family's hands. Her heart, inexplicably tied to someone she should never have trusted. I'll think about it, she said finally. It was the best she could offer. David nodded, accepting it. I'll wait. However long it takes. Sarah walked out of the restaurant, into the cold Chicago night, feeling like she'd just watched her entire understanding of the world shatter into pieces. But beneath the fear and confusion and betrayal, one thought kept surfacing. He'd said he was falling in love with her. And God help her, she felt the same. 3 days of silence. Sarah didn't answer David's calls. Didn't respond to his texts. She went through the motions, making Emma breakfast, walking her to school, pretending everything was fine, while her mind churned with impossible questions. On the 4th day, the answers came. Sarah was picking Emma up from school when a black SUV pulled up beside them. Before she could scream, 2 men grabbed her sister. Sarah! Emma's shriek pierced the air as they shoved her into the vehicle. Sarah ran, lunged, fingers brushing the door handle before something hard struck the back of her head. Darkness. She woke in a warehouse. Concrete floor. Rusted chains. The smell of oil and fear. Ah, Sleeping Beauty awakens. The man who stepped into the light was maybe 60, silver-haired, with the cold eyes of someone who'd stopped feeling decades ago. He wore an expensive suit, moved like he owned the world. My name is Lorenzo Castellano, he said pleasantly. Your father stole something from me 22 years ago. I want it back. I don't know what you're talking about. Sarah's voice cracked. Where's Emma? Where's my sister? Safe. For now. Lorenzo crouched before her, tilting her chin up with one manicured finger. Thomas Jones, your father, copied files before he disappeared. Evidence of every transaction, every burial site, every dirty deal my family ever made. Insurance, in case we came looking. His smile was ice. We never found him. But now we've found you. I don't have any files. I didn't even know. Then you'll help us find them. Or your sister dies. He stood, brushing off his knees. You have 24 hours to remember where your father might have hidden his secrets. Think carefully, Ms. Jones. Emma's life depends on it. He walked out, leaving Sarah alone with her terror. Across the city, David Francisco was destroying his office. Find them. He hurled a crystal decanter against the wall. I don't care what it costs. I don't care who you have to hurt. Find them. Victor stood stoically amid the chaos. Lorenzo Castellano's people are ghosts. They've been underground for 15 years. Then dig them up. David's voice shook with rage and fear. Sarah and Emma have been missing for 6 hours. 6 hours, Victor. Every minute we waste. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Francisco. Lorenzo's voice slithered through the speaker. I believe you've been spending time with someone who belongs to me. David's blood turned to ice. If you touch her. Touching wasn't the plan. But plans change. A pause. Your father and I were partners once, before he decided to go legitimate. Did you know Thomas Jones worked for both of us? Played both sides? Your father trusted him. I didn't. Seems I was right. What do you want? The files Thomas stole. Sarah claims she doesn't know where they are. Perhaps you can motivate her memory. Lorenzo's laugh was soft, cruel. Warehouse District. Pier 17. Come alone, or I start sending pieces of the little girl to her sister. The line went dead. David stood frozen, phone clutched in white-knuckled fingers. Sarah was out there, terrified, maybe hurt. Emma, a 9-year-old child, was being used as leverage. And it was his fault. All of it. If he'd never approached Sarah, never dragged her into his world, she'd still be safe. Still be free. Still be blissfully ignorant of her father's past. Boss. Victor's voice cut through his spiral. What's the play? David looked at the man who'd protected him for 15 years. The man who'd helped him build something different from his grandfather's legacy of blood. Call everyone, David said quietly. Every ally, every soldier, every favor we're owed. Lorenzo Castellano wants a war. His eyes hardened into steel. We'll give him one. In the warehouse, Sarah prayed. Not for herself, for Emma. For the little girl who'd already lost everything once and was now trapped in a nightmare because of a father she barely remembered and secrets Sarah had never known existed. Please, she begged silently. Please let her be okay. Take me instead. Take anything. Just let Emma live. Her wrists bled from fighting the chains. Her head throbbed where they'd struck her. And somewhere in this hellhole, her baby sister was alone and terrified. David's face flashed in her mind. The way he'd looked when he said he was falling in love with her. The way he'd promised to protect them. Had he known this would happen? Had he led Lorenzo straight to them? No. She couldn't believe that. Wouldn't believe it. But belief didn't matter now. Only survival. The door creaked open. A guard entered, grabbed her arm, yanked her upright. Time's up, princess. Boss wants to know what you remember. Sarah thought of Emma's gap-toothed smile. Her nightmares. Her trust. I'm coming, Em. I swear to God, I'm coming. She just had to figure out how. Sarah's mind raced as the guard dragged her down a dim corridor. Her father. Files. Insurance. Where would Thomas Jones hide something he never wanted found? Memories flickered through her panic. Her father's office in their old house, the one room she and Emma weren't allowed to enter. His obsessive organization. The way he'd always said, some things are safer forgotten, sweetheart. But one memory surfaced brighter than the rest. The cabin. Her parents had owned a small cabin in Wisconsin, near Lake Geneva. They'd gone every summer until the accident. Sarah had inherited it but never visited, too many painful memories. It sat empty now, untouched since her parents' deaths. Her father had built a workshop there. Underground, he'd called it his thinking space. As a child, Sarah had never questioned it. Now she understood. The guard shoved her into a larger room where Lorenzo waited, Emma huddled in a corner behind him. The little girl's face was tear-streaked but defiant, so much stronger than any 9-year-old should have to be. Sarah. Emma lunged forward, but a guard caught her arm. I'm okay, Em. I'm here. Sarah fought to keep her voice steady. Everything's going to be okay. Touching. Lorenzo circled her slowly. Now. Have you remembered anything useful? Sarah's heart pounded. If she told him about the cabin, he'd kill them both once he had what he wanted. But if she didn't? There's a cabin, she said carefully. In Wisconsin. My father had a workshop there. Underground. Lorenzo's eyes gleamed. See? Memory is a wonderful thing when properly motivated. He gestured to his men. Prepare the vehicles. We leave in. The lights went out. Complete darkness. Then, gunfire. Shouting. The sound of bodies hitting concrete. Sarah dropped to the floor, covering her head, screaming Emma's name. Sarah. Her sister's voice, somewhere to the left. Red emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in bloody shadows. Sarah crawled toward Emma's voice, glass cutting her palms, chaos erupting around her. A hand grabbed her shoulder. She swung blindly. Sarah, it's me. David's face materialized in the crimson glow. Blood on his cheek, gun in his hand, eyes wild with fear and relief. David. Emma. Where's Emma? I don't, Emma. Here. The little girl emerged from behind an overturned table, scrambling toward them. David scooped her up with one arm, grabbed Sarah's hand with the other. Move. Now. They ran through the warehouse, stepping over fallen guards, Victor appearing beside them with a weapon drawn. More of David's men covered their escape, trading gunfire with Lorenzo's remaining soldiers. The back exit, Victor commanded. Go. Fresh air hit Sarah's face like salvation. A black SUV waited, engine running. David practically threw her and Emma inside, diving in after them as bullets sparked off the metal frame. Drive, he roared. The SUV peeled away, tires screaming against asphalt. Sarah clutched Emma to her chest, both of them shaking, tears streaming down her face. You're okay, I've got you. Sarah. David's voice was ragged. He reached for her, then stopped, uncertain. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm fine. We're fine. She looked at him, really looked. The blood, the terror barely concealed behind his composure, the way his hands trembled as he holstered his weapon. You came. Did you think I wouldn't? I didn't know what to think. After everything you told me, after. I would burn this city to the ground for you. His voice cracked. Both of you. When I heard they'd taken you, He stopped, jaw clenching. I've never been that scared in my life. Not even when my father died. Emma, pressed between them, looked up at David with wide eyes. Are you Sarah's boyfriend? Despite everything, Sarah almost laughed. I don't know, David said softly, looking at Sarah. Am I? Sarah thought about her father's secrets. About the world David lived in, the danger that would always follow him. About all the reasons this was wrong, impossible, doomed. Then she thought about the way he'd looked at her across restaurant tables. The way he'd charged into a warehouse full of armed men without hesitation. The way he was looking at her now, like she was the only thing that mattered. We need to talk, she said. About everything. About my father's files, about Lorenzo, about what happens next. We will. David's hand found hers, intertwining their fingers. But first, the cabin. If those files exist, we need to find them before Lorenzo regroups. They are the only leverage we have. Sarah nodded slowly. Wisconsin. Lake Geneva. I can show you where. Then that's where we go. David pulled out his phone, dialing with his free hand. Victor, change of plans. We're heading north. The SUV merged onto the highway, Chicago's skyline shrinking behind them. Emma had fallen asleep against Sarah's shoulder, exhausted by terror. David hadn't let go of Sarah's hand. I'm sorry, he murmured. For all of it. For not telling you sooner. For putting you in danger. You didn't put me in danger. Lorenzo did. Sarah squeezed his fingers. But we're going to end this. Together. Together, David echoed, and something in his expression shifted, from guilt to determination, from fear to hope. They had a long drive ahead and a dangerous enemy behind them. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Sarah believed they might actually survive. The cabin looked exactly as Sarah remembered, weathered wood, wraparound porch, nestled among pine trees that whispered secrets to the wind. But seeing it now, through adult eyes that understood what her father had been hiding, everything felt different. Haunted. Emma was asleep in the SUV with two of David's men standing guard. Victor had stayed in Chicago, coordinating their defense and tracking Lorenzo's movements. The monster was regrouping, licking his wounds, but he wouldn't stay down for long. They had hours. Maybe less. The workshop entrance is behind the woodshed, Sarah said, leading David through overgrown grass still wet with morning dew. Dad always said it was for storing tools, but I remember him disappearing down there for hours. The shed's door hung crooked on rusted hinges. Inside, dusty equipment sat forgotten, saws, hammers, relics of a man Sarah thought she knew. She moved an old workbench aside, revealing a trapdoor hidden beneath years of debris. Help me, she said. Together, they pulled it open. A wooden ladder descended into darkness. David went first, gun drawn, flashlight cutting through the shadows. Sarah followed, heart hammering, descending into her father's secrets. The underground room was larger than she'd expected. Filing cabinets lined one wall. A desk sat in the corner, papers still scattered across its surface as if Thomas Jones had stepped out yesterday instead of dying 18 months ago. He knew, Sarah whispered, touching the desk. He knew someone might come looking eventually. David was already opening filing cabinets, rifling through folders. Financial records. Transaction logs. Names, dates, amounts. His voice trailed off. Sarah, come look at this. She crossed to where he stood, staring at a thick folder labeled insurance. Inside were photographs. Documents. Recordings on old cassette tapes. Evidence of crimes spanning 3 decades. Murders, money laundering, political corruption. Names Sarah recognized from newspapers, from history books, from David's own stories about Chicago's underworld. And at the very front, a handwritten letter. To whoever finds this. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. Maybe that's justice. I spent 15 years helping bad men do terrible things, telling myself I was just an accountant, just keeping the books. I wasn't pulling triggers. I wasn't giving orders. But I was guilty. I knew what I was enabling, and I did it anyway. I left because I met your mother, Sarah. Because she showed me what goodness looked like, and I couldn't stomach who I was anymore. I copied these files as protection. If they ever came for me, I wanted leverage. I hoped I'd never need it. Hoped the past would stay buried. If you're reading this, it didn't. I'm sorry, sweetheart. For the lies. For the danger I've put you in. For not being the man you thought I was. Use these files however you need to. Protect yourself. Protect Emma. And know that despite everything, the best thing I ever did was love you. Dad. Sarah's tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. David's arm wrapped around her shoulders, solid and warm. He was trying to protect you, David murmured. In the only way he knew how. He was a criminal. He was a man who made terrible choices and spent the rest of his life trying to be better. David turned her to face him. Sound familiar? Before Sarah could respond, David's phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. Lorenzo knows we're here. He's 20 minutes out with a full team. Fear spiked through Sarah's chest. Emma is being moved to a safe location right now. My men won't let anything happen to her. David's voice was steady, but his eyes held something new, calculation. Strategy. We have what he wants. Now we use it. How? David pulled out his phone again, dialing a number. Lorenzo wants these files because they implicate him in crimes the current organization would kill him for. He's been hiding his past, pretending to be retired, legitimate. If the other families found out what he did, what he's still doing, they'd turn on him. They'd destroy him. David's smile was cold. Hello, Anthony. I need to speak with your father. Tell him David Francisco has information about Lorenzo Castellano that he's going to want to see. The next 15 minutes were the longest of Sarah's life. David made call after call, sending photos of documents, reading names and dates that made powerful men go very quiet on the other end of the line. Sarah watched him work, watched the man who ran from his family's legacy wield it like a weapon to protect her. When the black SUVs appeared on the cabin's dirt road, there were 2 sets. Lorenzo's men emerged first, a dozen armed soldiers spreading across the property. The old man himself stepped out last, silver hair gleaming, confidence radiating from every pore. Mr. Francisco, Lorenzo called out pleasantly. I see you've found Thomas's little treasure trove. I'll take those files now. No. David stood on the cabin's porch, Sarah behind him, files clutched to her chest. You won't. I have 12 men. You have 2. Lorenzo spread his hands. The math seems clear. Then you should look behind you. Lorenzo turned. 3 more SUVs had arrived, blocking the road. Men emerged, different men, wearing the colors of families Lorenzo had betrayed decades ago. Families who now knew exactly what he'd done. Anthony Romano sends his regards, David called out. As do the Volkov brothers. And the Martinelli family, who were very interested to learn what really happened to their father in 1987. Lorenzo's face went white. You have two choices, David continued, his voice carrying across the clearing. Surrender now and face judgment from the council. Or resist, and face judgment from the men whose families you destroyed. The soldiers behind Lorenzo exchanged glances. One by one, they lowered their weapons. This isn't over, Lorenzo snarled. Yes. David descended the porch steps, crossing until he stood face to face with the man who'd terrorized Sarah's family. It is. Victor's men moved in, restraining Lorenzo as he screamed threats and promises of revenge. The other family's representatives collected the files, evidence that would seal Lorenzo's fate in ways even his money couldn't prevent. And then, finally, it was quiet. Sarah stood on the porch, shaking, as David walked back toward her. Blood still stained his cheek from the warehouse. Exhaustion lined his face. But his eyes, when they met hers, held something that looked remarkably like peace. It's over, he said softly. You're safe. Emma's safe. He'll never hurt anyone again. Sarah should have said something profound. Something worthy of the moment. Instead, she grabbed his face and kissed him. David stiffened for one surprised heartbeat, then melted into her, arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her close. The kiss tasted like tears and gunpowder and relief so intense it hurt. When they finally broke apart, foreheads pressed together, breathing ragged, David laughed quietly. I wasn't sure you'd still want this, he admitted. After everything. I want you, Sarah whispered. All of you. The good parts and the complicated parts. I want to build something real with someone who knows what it means to fight for the people they love. Even knowing what my family is? What I am. Sarah pulled back, looking into those gray eyes that had terrified her a month ago and now felt like home. You're the man who saved my sister. Who charged into a warehouse for me. Who just dismantled a criminal empire to keep us safe. She smiled through her tears. That's what you are, David. Everything else is just history. He kissed her again, softer this time. A promise. Behind them, the sun rose over Lake Geneva, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A new day. A new beginning. And Sarah finally believed they'd get to see it. The SUV carrying Emma arrived at the cabin just as the last of Lorenzo's men were being driven away. Sarah ran across the clearing, not caring about the gravel cutting into her bare feet or the cold morning air biting her skin. Emma burst from the vehicle before it fully stopped, sprinting toward her sister with arms outstretched. They collided in the middle of the driveway. I was so scared, Emma sobbed into Sarah's shoulder. I thought they were going to. Sure. I know, baby. Sarah held her tight, rocking her like she used to during those first terrible nights after the funeral. But it's over now. The bad men are gone. They can't hurt us anymore. Promise. Sarah looked up to where David stood on the porch, watching them with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. He'd just dismantled a criminal conspiracy, faced down a dozen armed men, and risked everything, not for power or revenge, but for her. For Emma. For a future he wasn't even sure she'd want to share with him. I promise, Sarah whispered. We're safe now. Emma pulled back, wiping her nose on her sleeve. Her eyes found David, and her brow furrowed with the intensity only a 9-year-old could muster. You're the man from the restaurant, she said. The one Sarah was scared of. David descended the porch steps slowly, crouching to Emma's level. I was. And I'm sorry I scared her. I'm sorry I scared you too. Are you still scary? To some people, yes. He glanced at Sarah, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. But never to you. Or your sister. I promise. Emma studied him for a long moment, the blood on his cheek, the exhaustion lining his face, the way he looked at Sarah like she was something precious. Sarah smiles more now, Emma said finally. Since she started having dinner with you. She used to cry at night when she thought I was sleeping, but she doesn't anymore. Sarah's heart cracked open. She hadn't known Emma was aware of those nights, those quiet breakdowns in the bathroom after double shifts and past due notices. Emma. If you make her happy, then I guess you can stay. Emma nodded decisively, as if she'd just negotiated a major treaty. But you have to be nice. And you can't yell at her like you did at the restaurant. David's lips twitched. I think your sister made that very clear the first time we met. Good. Emma grabbed Sarah's hand, then, after a moment's hesitation, grabbed David's too. I'm hungry. Does this cabin have food? The laugh that escaped Sarah's throat felt like the first real breath she'd taken in days. Let's find out. The cabin's kitchen was dusty but functional. Sarah found canned soup in the pantry, her mother's emergency stash, still unexpired, while David started a fire in the old stone fireplace. Emma explored every corner, her resilience already bouncing back, her curiosity overriding her trauma. There's a room with books, she announced, racing back to the kitchen. Can I read? Go ahead, Em. Sarah watched her disappear down the hallway, then turned to find David standing in the doorway, watching her with quiet intensity. What? She asked. Nothing. Just. He crossed to her, taking the soup can from her hands and setting it aside. You're extraordinary. You know that. I'm a mess. I haven't slept in 2 days, I'm covered in dirt, and I just found out my father was a criminal accountant for the mob. And yet here you are. Making soup. Taking care of Emma. Still standing. His hands found her waist, pulling her close. Most people would have crumbled by now. I wanted to. Sarah rested her forehead against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong. So many times, I wanted to just give up. Let the system take Emma, walk away from everything, stop fighting so hard for a life that kept trying to destroy itself. Why didn't you? Because Emma needed me. Because my parents raised me to show up, even when it hurts. She looked up at him. Because somewhere deep down, I believed things could get better. I just didn't know how. David's thumb traced her cheekbone. And now. Sarah thought about everything that had happened since that night at Ross's. The fear, the revelations, the danger. The way David had fought for her without hesitation, without conditions, without asking for anything in return. Now I think I'm starting to understand what my father meant, she said slowly. In his letter. About meeting my mother and finally seeing what goodness looked like. David's breath caught. Sarah. You're not perfect. Your family's history isn't pretty. There are going to be complications and dangers and probably more threats I can't even imagine. She cupped his face in her hands. But you make me feel seen. You make me feel strong. And when I look at you, I don't see a monster or a mafia boss or any of the things the world says you are. What do you see? A man who's trying to be better. Who's willing to burn down everything he built to protect people he loves. She smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks. That's the man I'm falling in love with. That's who I want. David kissed her then, slow, deep, full of promise and hope and everything they'd almost lost. When they broke apart, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Move in with me, he murmured. You and Emma. Not today, not even this week, but soon. Let me be part of your life. Let me help you build something real. What about the danger? Your enemies, your business. I'm done. The words came out fierce, certain. I've been looking for an exit for years, a way to go legitimate without destroying everything my mother built. Lorenzo's files gave me leverage I didn't have before. I can restructure, step back, hand the complicated parts to people who actually want them. He pressed his forehead to hers. I want a different life. I want to be someone Emma can be proud of. Someone you can be proud of. I'm already proud of you, Sarah whispered. From the other room, Emma's voice echoed, Are you guys kissing? That's gross. They broke apart, laughing, really laughing, the kind of laughter that comes from surviving the impossible and finding joy on the other side. We should feed her, David said. We should. Sarah grabbed his hand, intertwining their fingers. And then we should talk about the future. Together. Together, David echoed. They walked into the living room where Emma sat curled in a worn armchair, a dusty book in her lap, firelight dancing across her face. She looked up as they entered, her expression shifting from curiosity to something softer. You look happy, she told Sarah. I am. Sarah sank onto the couch, pulling Emma close on one side while David settled on the other. For the first time in a really long time, I am. Outside, the Wisconsin sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist. Inside, a new family took shape, imperfect, unexpected, forged in fire and bound by something stronger than blood. Love. And the courage to choose it, even when the world said they shouldn't. We have come to the end of the story. Thank you for watching to the end. Share your opinion about this story in the comments below. I like getting feedback from my audience. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our heartwarming stories.